Hello, hola, buenos días, bon dia. Good morning, and thank you for showing up so early. And welcome to Sónar+D and Sonar, the music festival which starts today. The conference started yesterday, so we have been running already for a few hours. I just want to say, yes, hello and good morning, which I already did, but also tell you that this panel that you are going to enjoy right now, it's being co-curated with CO Pop Festival from Cologne, and it belongs to a bigger project called We Are Europe, in which 8 European festivals, we collaborate to make things together. Things like this panel, things like other activities like shows, concerts, more panels, keynotes, etc., etc., etc. You will find more We Are Europe activities around Sonar and Sónar+D, and there is also a booth outside where you can meet the We Are Europe team. So now, with further ado, I would like to introduce you a panel that we have called Creative Tools for Future DJ Culture, and I have here with me Ronnie, Jack, Heiko, and Andrea. Please welcome them with an applause, and thank you very much.
Thank you, and good morning. I know 10:30 is not usually the time when people here like to go to a panel, so I much appreciate everyone being here. Usually the plan is that we do the panel here, and then at the end we're going to open up for some questions. But I'd like to do it a little differently, because most of the panels here then run out of time and there's no time for questions left. So if at any point during the conversation anyone has a question, just raise your hand and I'll try to include it during our conversation. And yeah, don't hesitate, just raise your arm. Hope I'll see you. I'm Ronnie. I'm a music tech consultant, and I work in the music industry for a little over 25 years now, based in Berlin. And maybe you guys can also do a brief introduction so that we know who you are.
Yep, sure. My name's Jack Bridges. I'm a senior manager for label relations at Soundcloud, also based in Berlin at the Soundcloud headquarters. Been working in the music industry for well over a decade now, and specializing in label relations primarily, and also really focused in the kind of dance electronic world, and now working with labels and creators to help them better understand the products that SoundCloud are working on, and specifically the DJ integrations that we'll talk about today.
And I'm Heiko Hoffman, and I'm the director for artist and label relations at Beatport. Before that, for many years, I've been editing a music magazine in Germany called Groove, and I'm also teaching at the Clive Davis Institute of New York University.
And I'm Andrea Rosen. I'm a product owner in the hardware division at Traktor. Before Traktor Native Instruments, I have a tech background and was helping startups scale all over the world. And I've been a DJ for 15 plus years now.
Okay, so let me start the panel with a question. Who is your favorite DJ, and why is that person your favorite DJ?
My favorite DJ is probably Andy C. from the drum and bass world. And he is one of my favorite DJs because I think he's been constantly kind of pushing the art form of DJing. Like every time I see him, whether it's playing on turntables with vinyl, or now in his kind of tractor setup, you know, utilizing, I think, anything that's available to him. He's just super skilled in terms of his performance, and his passion for the music is still, I think, completely unrivaled. So he's always an incredibly exciting artist to see, and I think it's amazing actually that he's going to be performing at Sonar as well. Yeah.
And, tricky one for you, huh?
For me, I don't have one favorite DJ. One of my favorite DJs, it's a DJ from Berlin at the moment called Sarah Farina, who's also been working with Native Instruments. And what I like about her is that Berlin is known as a city for techno music, and she's hardly playing any techno at all. So it's a lot of bass music, footwork, grime, drum and bass, and I really like that attitude and the energy that she brings with it. And one of my other favorite DJs, he's actually playing at Sonar by night tomorrow for 6 hours. It's Floating Points, and I think he's one of those DJs who's really good at doing long DJ sets, so I'm looking forward to see him tomorrow night.
And what makes him such a great DJ for you? Because, I mean, just playing long isn't necessarily a quality.
No, but it's just that he's so versatile in the styles that he's playing, is that you have an idea of what could be included in the DJ set, but then when you actually go there, it's always a surprise. So it's this combination with going somewhere because you expect to have a certain mix, but then what it is exactly, you need to find out.
Okay.
Currently, my favorite DJ right now is Joe Vandal, who's also playing with Sonar. I think what's interesting, as we're all music nerds on stage, is that we all like versatility, and I think that's why I'm really in love with what Joe is doing now. It's his own productions, but also playing other music, and he's switching between genres so seamlessly, which is not always what, especially Europe, but I think also in Berlin, that people like this at all, and he's doing it fantastically.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's kind of funny that we're all located in Berlin and we're talking about innovation and DJ culture and creative tools, because all the companies you work for, they are pushing the boundaries of DJing, they're providing interesting tools, etc. But in terms of DJ performances, I would say Berlin is probably most of the traditionalist places in the world where it's still tons of vinyl DJs, it's still pretty much dominated by mixing track A into B. And why do you think that is? Because if you live in a city that's such a creative hub that develops all these interesting tools and technologies, etc., and then you go out in a nightclub and what you'll see is pioneer to pioneer, or you know, a few tractor DJs or a lot of vinyl DJs. Why do you think that happens?
I mean, for me, I don't know. That's a tricky question, and you know, I don't actually go out so much kind of in Berlin, partly because the music kind of can be very kind of linear in terms of just being techno. But I think the performance aspect of playing with records, is still considered, an art form. The long sets, the finding the records that other people don't have, because they're limited pressings. I think that's also supported by a culture within Berlin where record shops still exist and thrive, and on a broader sense in Germany, they still value like physical product as well. So I think it's kind of rooted to that as well.
For me, there's a couple of reasons why that is. And one is that in Berlin clubs, actually, performance is not very important. The DJs are not up on a stage usually, but they're quite hidden or just on the same level as the audience. So, and also because a lot of parties run for, a long time. You have some parties at about Blank or Griesmühle, not even to mention Berghain, that run for 36 hours over a weekend. And if you have these long parties, it lends itself more to play out tracks than to do something that's very effectful in a short amount of time. And then the other reason, I think there used to be a time when people in Berlin were much more experimental when it comes to working together, for example, with sounds and visuals. And that has kind of stopped, and I think the main reason why that has stopped is that the two main categories of clubs that we have in Berlin, that what Berlin is famous for, is one, big industrial spaces where the architecture lends itself more on the darkness and the focus on the dancing, and you don't want to distract it by the visuals. And the other clubs are clubs in the tradition of Bar 25, like Sisyphos, or in the summer all these parties open air and in the garden, and there you don't need visuals at all. It's enough if you have the sun and people seeing each other and dancing outside. So I think those are a couple of reasons why actually technology isn't used that innovatively for DJing in Berlin.
But I also think, just to add to all of your points, what all of this technology and gear and software are doing is it's democratizing music for so many people. So when we started with records and turntables, there was a lot to learn manually, so beat matching and everything else. And now with this democratization of it, DJs that started from these other tools and really want to expand their knowledge further show their true artistry by doing more, so hybrid DJing and mixing other decks and loops and effects. But now that it's shared with so many people, you see more A/B DJing, so more people are doing that. It just shows it just shows up less. That's what I think. It's more just the overwhelming amount of people that are actually using these DJing tools now.
I mean, when the digitalization of music happened, it went from replicating traditional formats into the digital space. So it was still the vinyl record or the CD, and then we kind of put that into a digital scenario. There was the same containers, etc. And when Native Instruments launched the STEMS projects and others, the conversations that you could have would drastically vary from traditional DJs who had very little interest in the thing. In theory, it sounded very interesting, etc. But then when you're talking to very young people who grew up in a different environment that's not driven by formats from the past, for them, the idea of DJing and playing record 1 into B was almost like, a gramophone would feel like to us or something. It wasn't DJing. DJing was something different. So do you believe there's going to be a generation shift at some point when, I don't know, Sven Väth decides with 75 that he's going to stop, and a young kid that's now 16 is then 25 and the big new superstar? Do you think there will be a change, or do you think with the democratization that you're talking about, where everybody can be a DJ at low skill, we will have just more people play track A into B? What do you think is going to happen?
I think, it will always continue to be track A, track B, but also B, C, D, E, F, and then elements of, like from stems, but kind of broken down into just, looping tracks rather than having them separated into their elements. But I think there's still a long way to go, and we're talking about the democratization of it. It's really trying to open it up to, anybody who's ever been interested in what the idea of DJing is, and, just the aspect of being able to blend two tracks together, without having to learn how to beat match can actually be really exciting for someone who's never done it before. And the introduction of actually the controllers as well that are becoming more and more affordable. Also now, with they're literally plug and play. That was the thing I was kind of most excited about using recently, the Traktor S2 controller with Traktor 2, which is the kind of free version, linking it to Soundcloud and just plugging it in, and everything worked. I was, in the beginning, kind of a bit puzzled by the fact there's no settings to open up and having to actually, sort of route things together. It just works straight out of the box. And for young people, especially teenagers, that's kind of what they need to be able to kind of come into this market and access it. And then it's about interacting with the music. And mixing from A to B is how they're going to start interacting with it. Then they can get much more creative later. But to see, the kind of delight on people's faces of just like, oh, I'm doing this, I'm actually mixing a track together, seeing, their idols or people they go and, watch and listen to every weekend, and then realizing that it's not necessarily easy, but it's been opened up to them to be able to try it and experiment it and develop and start a process of becoming essentially a music discovery, going into music discovery mode, where they have to find the music, put it into their collections, and become a really active user. I think that's what's exciting about some of these new developments and integrations. It's really turning on a younger generation into the idea of DJing and being creative with music and discovering music.
But would you say that's a natural development based on skill that you start from A to B, or is it because the role model that you see of a DJ is still doing A to B? So what is causing this starting point? Well,
it's still where the software is built, and it's what sort of just guides you towards mixing something from A and B. So it's not skill. It's just until they're designed differently. That's the road that you kind of go down, yeah. But I think there's still a long way to go in terms of bringing people into it before we can switch it up and say, hey, you don't need to go from A to B. There is other opportunities here.
For me, it's actually not such a generational question. The question of either just playing and mixing one track into each other or taking it apart. I think it also has a lot to do with what kind of genre of music you're into. For example, if you're into DJing disco-influenced house music, then this lends itself more to playing out a full track and then mixing it into a new track. But if you DJ with very minimalist tools or techno, then you're more interested in engaging and taking it apart and adding different beats of percussion and drums to it. But I think it really depends what kind of music you're into. If you're a hip-hop DJ, then you interact differently with music than if you're playing very experimental electronic music.
So you're saying basically this song versus the track-based kind of source material? Or?
Yes.
Okay. But then at the same time, you have people like Too Many DJs, etc., that take songs and take them apart and mix them up entirely. So you have all of that too.
But that's exactly it. That's the true artistry coming through. And I definitely wouldn't say it's lack of skill or anything for DJs to play A and B, especially with the democratization of DJ tools. It's more, it's a learning tool to start out with A or B. And then DJs who want to do more, I mean, especially as they evolve, they get bored. They get bored with just doing one thing. And so whether, I do agree on the genre specifics, but even still, every genre starts to get bored with the more that you evolve in the skill itself with just doing one thing. So you want to find other tools to make it work, whether it's hardware or software, these integration tools.
Yeah. No, I mean, one of the things that has definitely brought more versatility is that when traditional DJs who would have to carry a record case, or if they're very, very successful and have a tour manager, maybe 2 record cases or 3, then having downloaded files that you have on a hard drive obviously allowed you to travel with lots more music. One of the big discussions of this year was all the streaming integrations that happened across the field. And again, you could say that's the next level where you don't even have to bring a hard drive with files. You have access to whatever the repertoires are now, 30, 40, 50 million tracks theoretically. How do you think this new move will impact the way DJing will happen in the next couple of years? What is going to be the most important impact of streaming integrations?
I think kind of reliability and infrastructure within the venue that you're going to be performing in. If it is relying on online-only integration, and as you mentioned, the portability really, for people to have confidence in the devices that they're using, whether it's mobile or whether it's a tablet or computer. And I think when the integrations were kind of first announced, one of the kind of issues or the barriers for some people is that it was quite connected to a computer again. And lots of DJs had already moved beyond that. They were taking USB sticks to clubs and events rather than taking their computer. And things are already kind of moved on again quite quickly from that in a very short space of time, where their integrations are now mobile-friendly, tablet-friendly. And again, for younger people, it's really kind of like bridging the gap from what they're already used to, where they're building their collections, which are on mobile phones, drawing music from clouds, and actually bridging the gap between that, where their collection lives, and how they can play it within the booth. This is still really early days. We're 6 months into most of these integrations, not just at SoundCloud, but broadly within the industry. So there's still a long way to go. But I would say, like at the weekend, I actually used the Tractor integration with SoundCloud, and it was seamless. But I did take my computer just because it was what I was actually kind of most familiar with in that particular scenario. But I could totally see myself doing the next time with my phone, completely out of sight, underneath the deck, and really just using the controller or the CDJs to be able to manage kind of what I'm going to play next. And after having played a few tracks, I completely forgotten that I was using a cloud-based online-only integration, and I don't think anybody else at that party would have known that I wasn't playing local files, that I was actually playing music, dragging and dropping it from the cloud. So, but to build on that, to go to like performance level at club, that's kind of, I think, where the development has to be. Is like the confidence in the infrastructure being provided by a venue that things are not going to be interrupted, or there's better developments of the software so they become more and more robust, so that people just have continue to build their confidence in the product, and in this big movement away from downloaded files.
I mean, Beatport has just launched a solution for this challenge in that you can actually now and in the future as a DJ stream into the DJ booth without the requirement of a Wi-Fi connection, because we have a locker, so similar as when you're watching Netflix and want to watch a movie on a plane, you can put it into a temporary locker, and that's what we are offering. But we are also similar to Soundcloud, have a product link that is just streaming into DJ apps for beginner DJs. But regarding your question, I think the biggest impact initially for these streaming for DJ products, it's going to be accessibility. And that's also, for me, one of the biggest changes that happened when digital DJing started some 15 years ago. That people in parts of the world that didn't have access to vinyl and record shops could now DJ. And with streaming, I see that there's even going to be a broader audience out there, and not just audience, but people working with the music and being creative with the music with regards to wherever they are in the world, but also with regards to people that haven't been DJing yet.
I completely agree, and with accessibility, because this was also in my mind as well, but with accessibility is also the discovery aspect, which I find quite interesting. I mean, as we all know, just the way we used to search for music and look for music was record stores and then blogs, and then of course using SoundCloud and Beatport took on a whole new level. And now with the streaming integrations, I see with the right integration and interface, the ability to be able to discover new music on an easier level right in the middle of your DJ set is going to be one of the biggest changes.
Let me ask you one thing. In the work environment in other industries, the job descriptions, the job profiles have been changing drastically over the last couple of years because of digitalization and all that stuff. We're still using a term DJ today, which is a disc jockey. And except from Berlin, very few people are actually playing discs. It's USB sticks, it's whatever. In the production world, where if you were in a band in the 80s or whatever, you would call yourself a guitarist or a drummer or something like that. If you talk to young people now that are creating music in one way or another, they don't really describe themselves as a guitarist or a drummer. They describe themselves as a producer or an artist, and they use all the tools that they have available, whatever that is, the phone, field recordings, any tool they have accessible. Do you think that the term of DJ will die at some point and will not be used by a young generation, or do you think it will always be called the DJ?
Yeah, I think one of the wonderful things about the word DJ is that hardly anyone consciously knows what DJ stands for if they're using it. So I think it will be around because people don't associate it, they don't connect it so strongly with the disc.
Okay.
Of course, it's just associated with cool. It's not, DJ is associated with cool. It's not. No one's really thinking about what those words actually mean.
I think if you surveyed a bunch of 15-year-olds, they wouldn't necessarily know that DJ meant disc jockey. They'd probably be pretty surprised. You could probably tell them it meant something else, and they would believe you. So I think it's become very disconnected from being just about controlling records and discs and just being about kind of a person on stage who's controlling the music.
Also, probably not many kids these days know any longer what a jockey is.
I had to explain to a 4-year-old what a record player was, because I said I made digital record players. They didn't get it, so it's really, this is all going out now.
Yeah. Then maybe the term DJ will not be sufficient anymore because they do much more things. I mean, one of the recent trends that we see more and more is these hybrid sets. I mean, if you years ago when Chris Liebing started this project with BDJ, it was already quite an impressive setup of tons of gear, and now it's even more so. If you see Rebecca play, I'm always amazed that she now brings a modular set and like tons of things. I would have trouble keeping control of all the things going on. But I think it's a new form of artistry where, talking about young people, it's so much easier to engage with music, have access to stems and samples and blend things and create edits, etc., etc. So maybe also the term DJ is not going to be how they see themselves, because DJ is limited to performing music of others maybe, and maybe they call themselves artists because it's blending your own creations with DJ performance. What do you think about these hybrid setups of DJing? Do you find them amazing? Do you think it's a trend that will go away because it's difficult to manage? Or like, what is your term on or your take on it?
I don't see it as being a trend. I think it's just giving people more options to evolve performance, to bring a whole new level of creativity, you know, whether it's you know, manipulating other people's music or you know, performing you know, elements of their own creations over the top of other people's records. I think a lot of the time it's quite kind of difficult on the dance floor to even know exactly what's happening up there on stage unless you're watching these kind of video streams from kind of behind the booth and to see how intricate it can become. But you know, that should never be lost on the dance floor. Just the level of creativity and effort and artistry that's going into a performance that's taking it, you know, beyond what we might consider just regular DJing. So I think it's really exciting what those kind of people do. And so you take it back to like Andy C. You know, he's really, you know, playing other people's records, but in an incredibly creative way. You know, playing, you know, 3, 4 tracks at a time. You know, but still, you know, using the traditional turntable and the controller vinyl to be able to do that because that's his medium. He's using the technology to be able to kind of take it to the next level, bring more records, like basically bring his whole music collection to every gig he plays at. And that's why he can, you know, sell out Wembley Stadium and just be the only DJ performing for 10 hours. So, yeah, I don't think it's a fad. I just think it will be something that completely continues to develop. And it's really personal what someone takes up there on stage and performs with. So, yeah, I think it's a very exciting period at the moment.
I constantly find myself explaining to people outside of the electronic music community, to explain why someone who's doing an electronic live act is not a DJ. For most people, it's the same. But I think it's important also to make a difference because the skill set that you need to have as a DJ is a completely different skill set than if you're someone who's in the studio and just good at making music. Yeah. That being said, I mean, most people use the same device, the same computer, sometimes even the same software to DJ and to make music. And I probably think that's going to be even happen more and more. And I find the concept of the prosumer quite useful, that on the one hand that you're consuming music as a DJ, but also you're producing music. So I think that will be around and there will be more and different forms of interaction.
Yeah, I agree. This is a really exciting time for what's going on in the performance aspect, not only because of all the tools that have been mentioned so far, but also logistically some of these tools. I mean, we were struggling with tone arms and things like this with our record players, and now you have what we built with the S4 that has the motorized jog wheel with haptic drive, plus what Phase is doing, which has the signal, so that way you can scratch the record. And so all of these new tools that are coming out to logistically make it easier for you to focus on the performance aspect, which I think is quite cool, how everything is evolving both in the hardware that I mentioned, but also in the software with even harmonic mixing and stems, as talked about earlier, or remix decks. This is bringing a new level to everything that DJs are doing now.
Let me see. Are there any questions from the audience? Oh, yeah, there.
What tools are being created to get additional audience engagement? For instance, I had great audience engagement in an environment where DJs and audience were all at the same level and they wouldn't have been able to see what was going on, but with a combination of a top-down video that was being projected on the wall and screencasting, so doing screen sharing, the audience could really see what each DJ was doing. But it was clunky, it wasn't the best setup, and it didn't work as well as I would have wanted it to. What tools are being created to get that kind of audience involvement?
I think at an educational level, there are a number of really exciting partners who've developed quite exclusive programs aimed at young people or anybody actually who's interested in DJing, like Future DJs is one. And they actually take the idea of DJing and the behind-the-scenes element of DJing on the road and into schools. and so they do road shows. They're going to try and take things online as well. And I think, yeah, it's really like about lifting the curtain on kind of what's happening behind, the scenes of DJing. And for a long time, it has, for not just young people, but for lots of people, felt closed off to them if they kind of don't know anything about it, or there's a barrier to purchasing a product because it's very expensive, or you can't go and buy records because there's no record shop in the town that you live in. And again, it kind of keeps coming back to this idea of democratizing, the access to DJing, which is happening at the moment, so that people of any age or any level of experience has an opportunity to discover DJing. So I think it's really exciting actually at the moment.
When it comes to the club environment and the club situation, I'm actually quite old-fashioned, and I think that the best audience engagement is actually dancing. And that's all that it takes for me.
I do agree with this. There are a couple tools, and actually they were startups at Sonar a couple of years ago that I think are interesting, like the Wave VR. It's not just with DJs, but also music performances in general. They're collaborating with many artists to put their performance on a whole new level with the audience. And also even Pacemaker, which I find interesting. It's technically a DJ tool. I'm not sure it's really audience, but I still find it interesting because it works with Spotify and tools to help people mix within the party segment. And then on top of that, it's not really a DJ tool, but as we were talking about yesterday, the Fortet show that happened just in London was this immersive experience with all the LEDs and the lights and the moving sound. So there's, I think, more and more performances want to move into something a little bit above the next. I mean, I think most of us don't want to go just see a DJ playing track after track without something a little bit extra there. Yes. They have to bring their performance to another level.
I think the Fortet show is amazing because he put tens of thousands of LED strings within the audience of the Alexandra Palace, and that for me was a great solution, how you don't need a huge screen and people to watch something, but really just dance surrounded. I mean, the DJ was in the middle.
Yeah, it was 360.
So everyone was around it. You had a 360-degree sound system, and the visuals were kind of, people were just inside of the visuals. So I think that was a great example of how you can do something innovative regarding visuals and music without it actually distracting from the music experience.
Let me take this question again, because everything you guys are describing is still kind of like a one-way street. It's just making it more visible what the DJ might be doing. Mm-hmm. It's whether showing on visuals what I'm doing, etc. But I like the question because it implies also an interactive element of, like, if you remember the electronic music supergroup that Zip did with like Monolake and a couple of others, there was like 10 people playing, and then there was one conductor who would listen to all the files coming in and then select the files that would be interesting. Now imagine a scenario where the audience actually engages with their phones and submits sounds to the DJ in one way or another, and the DJ is kind of like the selector and says, nah, this one doesn't work. Oh, this is interesting. Would have never come up with this, and actually creates an interactive performance.
I think you might see that more through what's being developed in the virtual reality side, where you don't need to be all in the same room together. But recently at the Miami Winter Music Conference, they actually were demoing, teaching people how to DJ just through VR. And so with two people or many people with the same headsets, you can all plug into the same room. Someone's actually performing on whatever kind of set of turntables or controllers that you want to create. And people are starting to interact and kind of in the same way that you're describing. People have sat in different locations, putting forward either tracks or music, and I think that potentially has the same kind of development opportunities on the technology side of getting people to be really interactive and creative without having to be in the same space together.
I think it's a continuation of an idea that probably Kraftwerk pioneered with their song Pocket Calculator, when in the late 1970s, when they were performing that song live, they were handing out some of the devices for people to actually press the button. And that's 40 years ago. And today, artists like King, for example, are doing this in a new way. And I think there are also going to be ways where you can do this on your own devices and then adding to the sounds that you hear.
Yeah, I could totally see this very interesting. I think it's an interesting question, not for everybody, of course. You know, a lot of DJs or artists or performers will have their own idea of what they want to play and they don't want any interference. But for those who are looking for the new creative stimulus, I think it could be pretty interesting. Yeah. Any other questions from the audience? No, doesn't seem like it. So for you guys personally, when we're talking about creative tools as a tool set, not a human skill or something like that, what do you think right now is the most interesting creative tool for DJing? Could be a device, could be a technology, could be a source of music. What do you think is the most impactful, interesting creative DJ tool for you?
I think it's for me, it's starting to be the phone, actually. The idea that the phone can store my music or access my music, I can control the music, I can actually then open another application and start to make ideas about music. Yeah, it's just that I think it's the phone, the accessibility, the portability of it. Having an idea on a bus and actually being able to open my phone, put my headphones on and sketch it out in an audio way, or creating a playlist on the way to a party in a taxi. That's a kind of, for me, a very creative tool in terms of how it impacts what I'm going to do at the other end when I arrive.
And for me, it's that combined actually with streaming and DJing. I'm not a DJ. I never really DJed other than for occasional parties for friends. But if it's really easy and if I can access anything that I want to spontaneously and seamless, then also for me, it's just something that's fun to do and where I'm doing something that previously I didn't do.
So, but it's the vast repertoire that you always have with you. So the accessibility.
Yes.
Okay.
I also think it's a combination of the two, actually. It's hard for me to choose just one. This whole portability and accessibility, but the streaming integrations, what's able to be done, with phone and with tablet, and making everything just a little bit more portable and in a full library accessible way is just mind-blowing, especially with all of us having in the past gone with records to gigs and things like this, to now just pulling out your phone and being able to stream everything you want. This will give a lot of creativity and freedom to future DJs and artists.
Mm-hmm. I mean, all the scenarios you're describing are very tech-friendly, and they're very, futuristic and optimistic, etc. But when you look back at DJing in the last couple of years, you were describing it earlier, we had all this amazing technology, even Pioneer had lots of tools, etc. And it has come down to convenience, where I have my tiny little USB stick, or I might not even bring the USB stick along with me. I just get some random and download the tracks from my locker or whatever. It's all about convenience, and convenience has won in that field. So why is that going to change? Because another element that we see, you either have the USB stick, and we have this huge trend of embedded systems, because people use the computers all day, they're on their phones all day, they check Instagram, all of that. And in the end, when they perform, they now like to have an embedded system that doesn't require the computer, they can leave it at home. Do you think it's a temporary thing, and in the end the mobile technology will win, and it's just for some people? Or do you think we'll see a complete backlash of saying my day is structured with computers and phones all day, for performance and for creativity I reject phones and computers?
I think on a mass level, it will be the convenience aspect of it, with the idea and the hope really that convenience brings it wins back time and gives you if you're an artist, hopefully more time to be creative. But in terms of the backlash, I think that will happen in niche areas, and people will be really interested to go and see specific performances that are not with computers, not with data and mobile technology. We see that already, in lots of different types of mediums, not just in music. I think it'd be very difficult to resist kind of what's happening just on a consumer level globally, and consumers have adopted convenience and technology pretty much over everything else, and we'll continue to see that filter into music and art and technology as well. Yeah.
I think different things work for different people, and I think one of the most important things, if you're an artist, is to find your own way and your own technology and your own tools that you're using. And this could be, on the one hand, using only modular systems when making electronic music and get rid of the computer, or just make music with apps, or do a combination of both of those. But I think it is important that you, as an artist or as a DJ, find a way that you use technology in a way that you're using it and not that it uses you.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, DJs are so vast, and so the term convenience is also relative depending on the type of DJ you are. So for some DJs, using USB sticks is the most convenient way to do it. Others, they need too many tools for their performance, so it's not convenient for them. And I think even USB sticks, it's a great solution to a current solution, but a great solution to a certain problem. How can I get the most amount of tracks in the easiest way possible? But as we are talking about new streaming integrations and things like that, the new way for getting tracks and the new solutions could possibly potentially be just all cloud-based. And the way that's done, whether it's by mobile or other form of gear, we'll find other convenient ways that will replace current solutions. So it's just really about each individual DJ.
I was given the sign that we'll have to stop, so I want to check one more time if there's any questions from the audience. No? Okay. On the topic, you have 30 seconds to give an ending statement on creative tools for the future DJ culture. It could be your hope for what's going to happen, a promise related to your company, whatever you want to do. Couple of seconds.
Okay, yeah. I mean, we've touched on it before multiple times, but I think what I'm really excited about with the tools and the integrations is really democratizing the DJ space, opening it up to people of gender, people of minorities, people who've never had access to, record shops and expensive technology, and really seeing kind of what that does to bring creativity into the melting pot from all over the world, all different ages, all different backgrounds and ethnicities. I think that's what has the potential, with what Soundcloud and the other partners are doing with integrations through streaming.
I don't actually want to have like 30 seconds to end, but
okay.
You're sitting here, Ronnie, and you've got such great expertise. So I was also wondering what your current technology or emerging technology is that you're really interested in when it comes to DJing.
Well, I think the most important part for that is that humans tend to be bored rather quickly. Some very quickly, for some it takes a little longer. And if you look at DJ setups, even the people who are around and are using innovative technology and lots of different tools, they change their systems constantly. You won't find a DJ that's playing with the same kind of setup all the time. They exchange certain modules, then it's modular, then the modular is gone, then it's a different controller, etc. And so I'm one of those people who just likes to use different things all the time. And one of the recent trends that I really like is that people are not so focused on just playing new music anymore, which was the case when I was still at Beatport. And now people actually go back at the vast archive of electronic music of the last couple of years and mix these things up again and play like early 90s tracks with new tracks. And that for me is also a very interesting creative tool. And I wish also from companies like you that your creation, your curation, your merchandising of content will take that into consideration, because that will bring a whole new promise to a new audience as well, of like a gigantic catalog of interesting music.
With regards to Beatport, that's one of the things that I'm really excited about, because together with the streaming software Link, we're also going to have a curated playlist landing page, and one is dedicated just to classics, where you can just discover the huge amount of archive material that there is there in electronic dance music.
Andrea, anything for you to add? Because we are going to be wrestled off stage.
Yes, just one last thing. Just my hope is, with all the democratization of exactly what we're doing, is that we will create many different levels of what artistry means, because we are enabling so many people to make music. And with putting all of what we do in this music ecosystem platform, we're really able to give everyone the tools to just express themselves the way they want, whether it's pure talent by using so many different tools, or just letting the entire world be able to make music. So this is really happy.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for joining, and enjoy Sonar.
Thank you.